You are listening to the Purpose for Every Season podcast, a podcast designed to help moms find purpose in every season of motherhood. I'm your host, Kermilia White. I'm a wife, a stay-at-home mom of 3, and a firm believer that there is grace for the season that you're in and hope for the season ahead. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about how to identify what season you are in. I believe that this is one of the best ways that I can set the foundation for the Purpose for Every Season podcast, because this podcast hinges on the scripture from Ecclesiastes 1:3 that says, "For everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven." And I believe that adopting this principle as mom can help us to really recognize that no matter what it may look like, every season of motherhood that we walk through does have purpose. And it's our job to intentionally seek God to discover what the purpose is for us. What is our purpose in the seasons of motherhood that we walk through? So to start, I want to identify 3 types of seasons, or 3 different categories of seasons that we can find ourselves in motherhood. I know that every mother and child and family dynamic is different, and that no 2 moms operate the same, no 2 children are the same. However, I do believe that no matter what those dynamics look like, they can fall into one of these 3 different categories. The first type of season that I want to talk about are those seasons that are very easy to identify. So if you are pregnant, if you are a new mom, if you are a more established mom and your kids are older, if you are in the newborn trenches, if you are going through a season of grief or a season of postpartum, I believe that in these very easily identifiable seasons, these can ironically be the seasons where it's a little bit harder to identify the purpose. When you get into the routine, when you have older kids and you're kind of in an established routine, it's a little bit harder to identify the purpose, because you're just kind of like, we're flowing through life right now. We're busy. Everything's fine. And even if you're going through a season of postpartum, I know for myself, it was very clear I am going through postpartum and it sucks and I am struggling. But was that the purpose? No. And I think that in these seasons where it's very clear where you are physically, it's a great time to seek God to see, okay, Lord, what is the purpose for this season that I am walking through right now? And I think if you're not sure where to start, a great foundation and a great baseline would be to examine yourself and look at, okay, what fruits of the Spirit am I exhibiting? And what fruits of the Spirit could I use more of? Do I have self-control in this season? Am I lacking patience in this season? Am I being very gracious to others in this season? Am I showing a lot of love? Do I have joy in this season? When it's very clear where you are, that purpose can seem a little foggy, because it's like, well, I'm walking through it right now. And so I think a good way to kind of begin to seek God for wisdom about the purpose for that season is to establish and identify the fruit. Where are you lacking and where are you flourishing? And I think that's a great baseline to go from. And I think it's also important to know that as you go through motherhood, there will be seasons where you're going to have a little more patience. You're going to have to be a little bit more gracious, to have a little bit more joy, to have a bit more peace, kindness, gentleness. And I believe that in establishing where you are and being able to say, okay, I do have joy in this season, but I could have a bit more patience, and seeking God for that and how He can begin to develop that in your life is a great baseline for you to then say, okay, God, please cultivate this in me so that I can move on to the next season in motherhood, and so that I can be who my family needs for me to be in this season. The second category of seasons that you can find yourself in are seasons that are not as easy to identify. So we spoke about seasons that are, pretty obvious. And then there are other seasons that may not be as obvious. And I think these seasons are seasons where you are in a state of anticipation or hope, or in seasons where you're praying for or believing for something. In the first chapter of Acts, the disciples asked Jesus, when are you going to restore the kingdom again to Israel? And he said to them, it's not for you to know the times or the seasons which the Father has put in his own power. And I think sometimes that is a bitter pill to swallow in general, honestly. And even in motherhood, sometimes you just won't know. Sometimes you don't know what season you're in, you just find yourself in it. And I think in those seasons, those are the moments where it is time to strengthen your faith. It is time to practice and walk out faith, to declare and decree over yourself and your family God's promises for you. Because I've learned that faith is usually built, it's a muscle that is usually exercised up against some sort of resistance. So I know personally, I found myself in this type of uncertain season where I thought I was in a pretty obvious season. I was pregnant with my daughter. I'd had 2 children already, 2 boys. And so I just thought that I was in a season of pregnancy. I'm expecting, I'm excited. And then we get news and we get these tests back and we're like, well, Lord, what is this? In that moment, I had to make the conscious choice to, 1, to give it to God, and to 2, okay, am I going to allow this to cause me anxiety, doubt, or am I going to strengthen my faith during this time? Am I going to lean on God during this time? Even though I have no idea what's going on, I have no idea what the outcome is going to be, but what am I going to choose to do? And I think in those seasons where we're not really sure what's going on, we're not sure, we may be praying or hoping for something to come to pass, and it's just not, we're not seeing how it's going to happen. It doesn't seem like it's going to happen. And those are the times for sure that I believe that God is wanting us in that season. The purpose in those seasons is to flex your faith muscle and to believe on him, to believe his promises for us, and to know that regardless of what the outcome looks like, that he is still good. And that is definitely a lot easier said than done, but I have personally found it to be true in my life. The third type of or category of season that we can find ourselves in are seasons of transition, a season where there is movement happening in our lives. Let's say we're getting a new job, we're moving into a new house, we're going back to work after just having a baby, we are adding a new baby to the family. Seasons of transition where in motherhood something critical is changing about the dynamic that you had before. And I believe the purpose in this season is to really trust God, to ask God to lead you and guide you, to trust in him with all our hearts and lean not on our own understanding in these seasons, but instead to acknowledge him in everything that is going on so that he can make our path straight. That is the main purpose in a season of transition, because anything can go wrong. We know anything can happen, whether you're moving, you're bringing a new baby home, anything can happen. And in this season, I believe that purpose is to really demonstrate our trust in God and to really lean on his faithfulness in that type of season and in that type of scenario. So now that we've gone through each type of category of season, the first obvious seasons where it's our job to come to God and to really examine ourselves and look at the fruits of the Spirit and to seek God about how we can improve and how he can cultivate those fruits that we need to be showcasing in that season. And then going to those seasons of uncertainty and how in those seasons we need to really begin to strengthen our faith in God. And then those transitional seasons where it's important for us to trust God and to lean on his faithfulness and to allow him to guide our steps and make our path straight. And so now that we know the different categories of seasons, I think it's important to know a few things that we should keep in mind in and out of season. So no matter what season you're in, I believe that this is a great way to kind of grasp onto some type of purpose in the midst of it. And of course, the first and foremost from Galatians 6:9, we should not grow weary of doing good, for in due season we will reap if we do not give up. And I believe this is practical and applicable to every season or every type of category of season that was mentioned, whether that's a season where you're examining yourself, whether that's a season of uncertainty, whether that's a season of transition. If we continue to seek God, to not grow weary, and to wait on the Lord in due season, we will reap. I think another great thing to know in and out of season is that, as Romans 8:28 reminds us, that all things work together for the good for those who love God and who are called according to his purpose. So no matter what season we find ourselves walking through, we can trust in the fact and be assured that all these things are working together for our good, and that God's plans for us are good. And that is just kind of one way that we can kind of have peace no matter the situation, no matter the season. It's definitely something to grab a hold of. And a final verse that I want to leave with you, which I think is really, again, goes back to the premise of this podcast. And so in Proverbs 15:23, it says, "To make an apt answer is a joy to a man, and a word in season, how good it is." And I just think that is so good, because with this podcast, and honestly throughout motherhood, I think it's very important that we encourage each other. Sometimes a word from another mom who has walked through what you have walked through, sometimes just a word of encouragement to let another mom know that you've been thinking about her, can really make all the difference and honestly do wonders in changing someone's day or someone's outlook in the current season that they're in. And it's my hope here that the Purpose for Every Season podcast can be a space of encouragement for moms, a space where moms can come and hear a word in season that is good for their soul. And I pray that along this journey that we all learn a lot together. I cannot wait to hear from you guys as well, to hear your thoughts. Everything from this episode, a summary, all the fun goodies will be on the website at www.purposefореveryseason.com. I cannot wait to join you guys in the conversation there. So until next time, I want to encourage you and remind you that for everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven. So let's continue to strive to find purpose in every season and to have hope for the next.